welcome back to my channel. Today the topic of this video is why you can't receive God in your life. The number one thing that separates us from receiving God is sin. And I want to go to the root of sin, which is, I believe, fear that God is not able to perform. Fear that God is not able to provide. Fear that God is not able to love. Fear that God is not merciful, forgiving, a good shepherd, and a good father. It comes from the fear that God is not able to perform regarding you. Usually fear is something that is deeply rooted. From fear arises thoughts. Why are things the way that they are? Why was I put in this position even though I had no control over it? Why can't I relate to this person in this intimate way? Why were they not able to see me for who I truly am? Why are people not valuing me and loving me the way I deserve to be loved? Why are these things happening to me? Why is my life like this? And if he does care, where is God? From there, those thoughts then lead to temptation. And being tempted is the devil coming to you, whether it be in your mind, whether it be in person, and telling you things that are untrue. If you give in to this temptation, it will ultimately lead to sin, where you may start blaming God for what is happening to you, and you may start disregarding God, withdrawing from his love. That is fundamentally where our inability to receive God comes from. It comes from fear that led to thoughts, that led to temptation, that finally ended with sin. Alright, so now that we've established where our distancing from God comes from, now we can move on to the next point, which is the fear of love precisely. God is love. The Bible tells us so. And God also tells us that he loves us. Absolutely nowhere in the Bible will you find an explanation for God's love for us. In 1 John chapter 3 verse 1, it says, "See what kind of love the Father has given us, that we may be called children of God." And then in another verse it says that we love because he loved us first. God is love, but love is not always God. Now the problem with this love, or rather I say the challenge with this love, is that it's so great of a love. It is so broad, it is so dense, it is beyond a finite human comprehension that it's scary. Let's go back to the beginning. So the story of Adam and Eve, we all know what went down. God gives them instruction not to touch the fruit of a certain tree because that tree belongs to him. When we look at the scriptures, the first thing that happened before Eve took of that fruit was that she was brought with an idea. The tempter came to her and said, "That's weird. Why doesn't God let you eat from this tree? He must want to withhold something from you." Then she eats of the fruit and then she gives it to her husband. God finds out, obviously. I guess interesting, right? We're gonna go in Genesis 3 verse 9 till 11 and I'll read. "The Lord called to Adam, saying, 'Why are you hiding?' And Adam replied, 'I heard you coming and didn't want you to see me naked, so I hid.' 'Who told you you were naked?' the Lord asked. 'Have you eaten fruit from the tree I warned you about?'" We see that Adam knew that he had transgressed. Because of his knowledge of the sin, he also came into realization that he was naked. The thing with Adam and Eve is that they were always naked. They just didn't know it. They were in their glorified bodies. So there was nothing wrong with the fact that they had no clothes. Because they could come before God and God could come to them and speak to them face to face without any complications. But then as they ate of the fruit and God is searching for them, they now come to realize that, oh snap, we've sinned and we're naked. We need to hide from the face of God. And that's literally how everybody that isn't able to receive God isn't unconsciously in the state of mind, or this condition of the spirit, I like to call it. This condition of the Spirit is that you know that something you've done is wrong. You know that you're imperfect. That's why criminals, when they commit crimes, they hide. Yes, they hide from a human authority, but they also know, morally speaking, what I've done is wrong, and therefore I need to hide. That's how we behave in regards to God. It all started with the first man. You know that you've done something wrong. You know you've offended your Creator deep down. Our moral code is inherent. So we all have an understanding of what is morally good and bad. We're also inherently born with evil because of what Adam has done in the garden. In the garden, for Adam and for Eve, the forbidden tree was the only moral code they needed. When they broke that moral code, they were casted out from the presence of God, and now they inherited evil. Because those two things are battling in your spirits, and because of this knowledge of sin, there comes this shame or this guilt that arises subconsciously that's telling you your moral code is speaking against you. Therefore, anything that resembles this moral code, you gotta run away from. You gotta hide from. You want no parts in this. Human beings fear what can challenge them the most, being wrong. We find security in knowing that what we do is good. We like anything that gives us that satisfaction. And so when we're encountered with a naked truth causing us to look inwardly, just like Adam did, and noticing that he was without clothes, we get troubled. And so it's the fear of having to go through that process of getting back to that secret place, that intimacy, that garden in which we were able to deal with God without any barriers. And so comes this process of sanctification that is going to refine us, that's going to take out whatever in us that isn't pleasing to Him, instead of coping with it or working with it in order to become a different person. You don't want to be called out. We want to be cuddled in our situation. You know that quote that says that diamonds are formed under pressure, but people don't like to be pressured. Diamonds are formed under heat and pressure. Once you retrieve diamonds from the rock, you don't usually sell it in its natural form. It has to go through a process of refinement. You bring the stone to a gem cutter, and that person will then refine the stone, forming, shaping with a machine and special tools. They usually have a specific lens that they use in order to handle the diamond to make it as beautiful as possible. And that reminds me of the story of Jacob. Now we know that Jacob was referred to as the deceiver. He lied to his parents, he lied to his brother, he lied to his wife. And so Jacob was on the run all his life. At some point, when he's on the run again, this time from his brother, he comes to a point where he's leading his family and he says, okay, you guys go ahead. I need to deal with something here. And he was left alone. That is Genesis 32. So I'm going to read from verse 22 to verse 29. Okay. And he arose that night and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed over the ford of Jabbok. He took them, sent them over the brook, sent over what he had. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of dawn. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, the man touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." And then he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men, and you have prevailed." And you know what's so intriguing about this verse? Before that man gives him the new name, he asks him, "What is your name?" As if the man, the angel, or God didn't know that his name was Jacob. The reason why he asked is because he was saying, You've gone all this way. You've lived a life of sin. Your life was a lie. You've come throughout all these different challenges and situations. You have wrestled with men. Then you have wrestled with me, God. What can you tell me about yourself? What identity did you have prior to this encounter? I said in one of my videos that names hold a lot of weight. Your name carries history. It holds your character, your personality. It holds your story. So God, in that moment, knowing the past of his servant Jacob, asks him, and Jacob didn't reply, "Why are you asking me for my name?" He surrendered. And he said, "Here's my identity." That's what it was. Jacob the deceiver. But the Lord in his mercy, he said to Jacob, "Well, that's not your identity anymore. Your new identity is Israel. You're called the one who prevailed against men and God." See, he was in that mentality of running. God caught up to him and said, "You're not running anymore." He comes to a point where he has to stop and notice God. God tells him, "Get over here. We're fighting. Forget this past story. You're this person now." The response of Jacob to that identity change was that he needed security. In the means of defending his insecurity, Jacob asked for reassurance from this man that he knew was God. We see here in Jacob that he feared the love of God. In his mind, he must have been thinking, how can this person, which is God, wrestle with me, acknowledge my sin, my past identity, and still give me a new name? Jacob was trying to make God tell him why he loved him and asking him, "Who are you?" That's the same thing we do. After God has known us and still chosen to love us, we in our defense, we seek or ask for more. It's almost as if we are embarrassed by this love that feels almost intolerable. It's like a compliment that you cannot accept. Psalm 139. Now, Psalm 139 is a psalm that expresses the love of God for us. And this specific part of the chapter, it's talking about the fact that God has searched us and known us, regardless of whether or not you're trying to hide. And it's like when you're living in sin and you know subconsciously that you live in sin, you try to hide from God. I'm gonna read from verse 1 to verse 7. It says, "O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You understand my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down. You are aware of all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, you know all about it, O Lord. You hem me in behind and before. You have laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is too high. I cannot attain unto it. Where can I go to escape from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence?" I really like verse 6, where it says that knowledge of you following me, knowing me, searching me. In other words, that love for me is too great. I don't understand it. It's clear we cannot understand the love of God for us. He loves us more than we know and we could ever imagine. So it's coming into peace. This person loves me. I don't understand it, and it's fine. I'm gonna trust him regardless. That's scary. You're deciding and you're choosing to trust somebody you may not have ever seen physically, may never have heard audibly, over yourself. That is a huge step. That takes a lot of courage. And that brings me into saying that you have to be honest with yourself and you have to be honest with God. Why are you doing what you're doing? Do you want God or do you not want him? Why are you seeking God or not seeking God? And understand this. You can be in the environment of God. You can be in the house of God, surrounded by men and women of God, and still not benefit of his presence. Like, people nowadays are comfortable with that. It's like Jesus, he was in his hometown, could not perform miracles because people got too comfortable being around him that they didn't see him as the Son of God. To them, he was the guy that cut the wood. That's it. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 5 till 7. And it says, having a form of godliness, but denying the power of it. From such turn away. For this is the sort they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sin, led away with diverse lusts, ever learning and never able to come to knowledge of the truth. This is Paul speaking, and he's writing a letter to Timothy. And he's saying, beware of the people that are in the house of God. Beware of those people that claim to be seeking for the truth, but are just there to install more confusion. It's like the Bible tells us, you shall know them by the fruits. Are you doing this from a place where you want to appear Christian just to be on the good side of the story when the story ends, because you fear hell and you want to please your family, you want your mother to be happy, and you want your father to say that you're a good son, or you want your pastor to give you a pulpit, or you want to impress a girl, or you want to impress a boy? Like, why are you doing this? Where are the products of your faith? Where are the products of you diligently and honestly wanting and seeking God? Like, where are those fruits? Where is your steadfastness? Where is your long suffering? Where is the evidence of you wrestling with God? Because how can you claim to be a Christian, to have found God or to have received God, but you are a mean person, you are intolerant, you lack compassion, jealous? Not that it's feelings that you experience, but that's who you are. How is it that you're this way, but you claim to be this overly spiritual, religious person that loves God and loves people, but those are attributed to your character? So when people see you, they don't see God. To those people, I would say, when you come before the Lord, when you're in the presence of the Lord, when you're praying, admit what you are. Admit that your name is Jacob, so that the Lord can reward you with a new identity. Come into a place of repentance and alignment with God, where you just admit it. You admit it. God, I don't know if I really want you. Put the desire in me to want you. You will be crushed. He will give you that desire. Pray that you want God and you truly mean it. You are already in the right direction. So hope is not lost for you. And you watching this video is not a coincidence. If you are here, it is a call to God. It is a knock at your door, at the door of your heart, at your hard head, at your numbskull, to come forward and to receive this love. It's not our duty to understand his love. Our duty is to love him back and to obey him. And with that comes other things, of course. The Bible says in Psalm 8 verse 8, what is man that you are so mindful of him, and the son of man that you visit him? Even the angels don't comprehend this love that God has for us. Come into acceptance with that, and then come into acceptance with your past identity, so that you can come into alignment with your new identity in Christ. Thirdly, be honest with yourself. Be honest with God. Don't let God judge you, because you don't want that. Judge yourself. At least you be judged with the world. And admit whether or not you want God or you don't. And if you do, ask him to give it to you. I'm going to conclude with this. God wills our good. We were created to worship God. We were created to go back to this love. Throughout the Bible, there's all sorts of parables, stories, and analogies where God is awaiting for us to notice him, to notice his love for us, and to run back to him. He just loves us. No reasons, no explanations. And honestly, that in itself is the greatest gift. In the same way, our duty is to love him back with all of our soul, mind, spirit, and strength, as it is commended to us. But in order to love him, we must know him, so that when he calls, you can answer. When he gives, you can receive. When he loves, you can love back. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you were edified. I pray that this word really touched your spirit, really reached the depths of your heart and cut between your bones and your marrows. I will see you in the next video. Bye!